floor.
Oh, you go on right now? Okay, yeah.
Okay, good morning, everyone. We are beginning Paradigm in Mishna Aleph. And first we'll start with an introduction. That is that we know that the Torah forbids us to eat the fruits of Shemitah unless we treat them in a certain way. We have specific rules on how we are allowed to consume the Shemitah produce. And the question really becomes, so what about things that grow from the ground that aren't necessarily eaten by people, or only animal food? Let's say they have other benefits. Would they also have the sanctity of Shemitah when they grow in the Shemitah year? So we know clearly the Torah states that human food gets the sanctity of Shemitah. We know that animal food gets the sanctity of Shemitah. We also learn that any kind of a usage of a food that's similar to eating will also give that food the sanctity of Shemitah. And similar to eating means the same when you eat something, you benefit from it, and at the same time you eliminate it, you use it up as you benefit from it. So any kind of thing that grows from the ground, that as you benefit from it, that is when you eliminate it, you use it up. So then the halacha is that also will have the sanctity of Shemitah. Don't know if this window that keeps coming up is in your way, but it's definitely in my way. Okay, so that's the rule. And therefore, as we're going to see from the Mishnah, that what's going to be included in the types of produce that have the din of Shemitah are going to be, let's say, plants that are used for dyeing. To dye, either used for dyeing one's body, one's clothing, whatever it may be. In that situation, you also have the benefiting at the same time. Moving over because, again, I don't know if you see the box, but I do. The point is, the benefiting is as you benefit from it, you're using it up. So basically, when you're dyeing a garment, you put the garment together with the plants in the water, and as the dye dyes the garment, the plant disintegrates. The plant goes away. So therefore, that's similar to eating. And therefore, the Mishnah is going to tell us that there are three ways of using a food by which we say the plant that grows has the kedusha of Shemitah. So the Mishnah begins. Again, Paradigm Mishna Aleph, Klal Gadol Amru B'Shvius. An important rule, major rule was said regarding Shemitah. Kol Shehu Ma'achal Adam, anything that is human food, Ma'achal Behema, or animal food, Miminat Seivim, or the type of plant that's used for dyeing. Ebe'ena Miskayim Ba'aretz, it does not last, it does not endure in the ground. Yesh Shvius, it will have the status of Shemitah. Uladam of Shvius, and its monetary value, or the money that's been exchanged, that the produce has been exchanged for, will have the sanctity of Shemitah. We'll explain what that means soon. Yesh beer, the beer of the law of beer applies. Uladam of beer, and again, the money exchanged for the fruit of Shemitah will have the law of beer. Okay, so let's go through each part. So the first things that were mentioned as a general rule for what produce inherently has the sanctity of Shemitah was human food, animal food, used for dyeing. And then it says, and it doesn't endure in the ground. That means you have certain things, if you leave them in the ground, they'll be fine. Other things, if you leave them in the ground, they're going to rot. And that will make a difference when we get to the law of beer. We get to the law of beer, as we have mentioned before, and we'll explain again soon. That is when this characteristic mentioned about not lasting in the ground is relevant. Okay, so the Mishnah begins that if these things are met, which again, primarily the first three conditions of human food, animal food, dye stuff, yesh leishvius, and sanctity of Shemitah. Sanctity of Shemitah means you're allowed to consume it, but there are very specific rules how to consume it. You can't destroy it. You can't sell it in a business-like manner. You can't do business with the fruits of Shemitah. So the fruits will have the sanctity of Shemitah. Well, the dam of Shvius. Now, let's say you now took money and you exchanged that money for the food. Now, we just said you can't do regular business with perish Shvius. So, are we talking about that a person illegally used the money to exchange it for food? It could, the halacha would apply then if you illegally did exchange money for food, the money would get the sanctity of Shemitah. But actually, the halacha is, if let's say food was picked in order to eat and then some was left over, you don't need it for eating, you're allowed to sell that. So that would be an example of where the money that was used to exchange for the Shemitah fruit was done permissibly. But whichever way it's done, the halacha is that if the money that is exchanged for the Shemitah fruit, that money takes on the status of Shemitah, gets the Kedusha of Shemitah. The Kedusha from the fruit that the money was exchanged for now goes on to the money, which means, again, you can't waste that money. You can't waste that money, and you can't use that money in a regular business-like manner. Now, it's important to know, as the Adarabban points out, there's a very big There's a very big difference between the fruit of Shemitah itself and the money that's exchanged for it. The fruit of Shemitah itself that has that sanctity of Shemitah, even if you exchange that fruit for the money and the money takes on the sanctity of the Shemitah fruit doesn't lose its sanctity. It doesn't transfer off of it. It basically transfers on, it extends on to the money, but it doesn't come off the fruit. So the fruit status is still going to be the same, just that now the money has that status. On the other hand, if you use the money now, that money that has a sanctity of Shemitah, if you now use that to buy food, so that food will get now the sanctity of Shemitah, and the sanctity will go off the money. That's the halacha. And therefore, if you now, and it's actually brought down that if you have money with the sanctity of Shemitah, you should use it to buy food in order to get the sanctity off the money and then onto the fruit. Okay, so that's what it means. The money has the sanctity of Shemitah. Then the Mishnah says, Yesh bir. It has the law of bir. Bir, we mentioned that when you have produce in the field, and the produce in the field basically has whatever's been left in the field has rotted. It's not available for the animals to forage. The halacha is that kind of food that you took into your house, you have to take it out of your house, you have to render it ownerless. That's the mitzvah of bir, it's the obligation of bir. So if a fruit has a sanctity of Shemitah, then you got to do that. You have to do bir on the fruit. If it's not one of these conditions, now again, this is if it's not the animal food or the human food or dye stuff, and then it doesn't have to go on bir. We should mention to you an example of something that doesn't fit these three conditions, doesn't have the sanctity of Shemitah, is wood. Wood from a tree. The tree grew in Shemitah. That wood from the tree, that wood that's used for firewood, does that sanctity of Shemitah? The answer is no, because firewood is not considered benefiting from the wood as it's being destroyed. You basically take the wood, you burn it, you turn it into embers, into coal, then you bake with it. So the benefit is the baking, but the baking is being used after the wood has already been destroyed and changed its form completely. That's why wood, regular wood, doesn't have the sanctity of Shemitah. Now, and therefore, it doesn't have the sanctity of Shemitah. There's no law of bir. Now, bir, though, in order for there to be bir, this is where that fourth condition, that it doesn't last in the ground, is relevant. Because if it lasts in the ground, that means you can leave it in the ground, nothing's going to happen to it. And that basically means that it's going to be available to the animals all the time. It means you could leave it there, and if you leave it there, the animals would have it. Therefore, there is no bir. It's not something that we say, well, it's not available for the animals, because if it's left there, it will be available for the animals. And therefore, only produce that doesn't last outside, meaning you can't just leave it in the ground, it's going to rot, which means it will come to a point that it's not going to be available for the animals to eat from. That is the kind of produce that's going to have bir. Well, the dam of bir, the same thing. The money that was exchanged for that Shemitah fruit, it gets the sanctity of the Shemitah fruit. You got to do bir on that also. Basically, if that fruit that had the sanctity that you use the money to exchange for, once that fruit has the time that you have to do bir on it, you have to do bir on the money also. So that's what it means in the last part when it says yesh lo bir l'dam of bir. It has all four conditions. That is when the mitzvah beer does apply to it and to its value. Okay, we're going to finish the rest of the Mishnah tomorrow. And now we're going to do the Sefer mitzvahs. Mitzvah sashay lahalvais la'aniya Yisrael. It's a positive commandment. This is the Chavetz Chaim Sefer mitzvahs. Is mitzvah Samat Bay 62. Mitzvahs asay. There's a positive commandment lahalvais la'aniya Yisrael, to lend money to people who are in need. Shenemar, as it says, Im kesev talva es ami. If you lend money to my people, or when you lend money to my people, which means bezu chayva, bezeh chayva. And actually, although it says if, it really means when. And that means to say that there's an obligation to do so. If somebody needs a loan and you have the money to give them the loan, there is a mitzvah to lend them the money. U'mitzvah zu gedoyla min hatzdaka. This is even a bigger mitzvah than actual tzedakah, actual giving charity. Mechiyeves yoser, it's even a greater obligation. Now, the Chavetz Chaim doesn't explain that. We might have thought that, lending money to the person, makes him feel indebted. If you give him a gift, he's scot-free. He's a poor person. He's got enough problems. But the Chavetz Chaim doesn't say that. He says that it's a greater mitzvah to actually lend money than to give tzedakah. And I think the explanation is because if somebody wants to borrow money, that means he doesn't want to give. He wants to not take. He wants to be able to borrow and pay back. That's what he wants. And that in many ways, and that makes a person feel better than receiving charity. And therefore, if the option is to lend money, it's even a bigger mitzvah than giving tzedakah, than gifting someone money. And therefore, it's an even greater obligation. The Torah is makbid. The Torah disapproves. In a strong way, somebody who holds back from lending a poor man money. As it says, if your eye will be bad when you'll be stingy against your needy brother, then the Torah declares this will be a sin against you. This will be held against you. So that's the strong language that's used for the person who has lent money. This applies in all places at all times, both by men and by women. Have a great day. Just to remind everyone that tonight is 6:00. Mordechai Lubavitz, my brother-in-law, our Chaz from Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, will be having a Zoom kumazitz, a Zoom concert. You should have received the email about it. I hope you'll all join and enjoy. Take care.